glasses. How y'all doing this evening? I don't know what this wicked spell that has been cast on me, but no matter what, I can put my glasses away, and every time I take them out, they're dirty as I don't know what that is. Vision. How y'all doing this evening? Welcome to the Rational Radicals podcast. And you know what? Let me just make sure I'm on every time. No, let me not burden y'all. Anyway, welcome to the Rational Radicals podcast. Waiting to hear from Brother Skip. Actually, I'm not sure what's up to him just now, but as I know, and we have a lot to get into, but I'd like to get to the phone, get to the live, get to the Q&A section, engagement, question, comments, criticism as quickly as possible, because we've been kind of going and haven't had the time for the community engagement. I recognize that, people get on me about that, so I'm definitely going to not take that for granted. We're going to make that happen. And so let's just jump in with both feet, because a lot's going on, but ain't a damn thing happening. What's been interesting to me is that we find that the U.S. government wants to charge Weezy, the CEO assassin, terrorism. And it's funny how the United States allows for terrorism to be redefined. I'm sorry. I got the ambience music playing. I know how y'all hate that. My bad. Because I like the background. I like the mood setting music. And I know how y'all hate that. So, sorry. Listen, I got some glasses. I ordered some new glasses. My glasses broke. Like I said, I have a memorial shrine for my OG glasses. I have a memorial shrine just off camera. But I literally went to 2 different cities to buy my new glasses, and I haven't found them. But my wife found a pair of my OG glasses online, because like I'm sick. These are my bedside glasses, and of course I'm too well established. I'm too affluent to have to go carry these glasses back and forth from my little desk to my bedside. These are my bedside glasses for my nightly reading. So I ain't been reading at night, which is fine. I'll just, I have to cope, first world problems, first world struggles. Anyway, moving on. What was I saying? Oh, there's a creeping definition of terrorism. The funny thing about the Western powers, the elites, the capitalists, the oppressors, the white power structure, whatever you want to call it, they've had a decades-long struggle with defining international crime and local crime, because, and Noam Chomsky is probably the most well-known scholar, critic, and researcher on this issue. For years, the United States, along with the G7 and other powerful entities, NGOs, and states, have been struggling to define racism. They've been struggling to define racism because they needed to create a definition of racism that exempted multinational corporations and Western states from that definition, because they've always wanted the facade of legality, the facade of universality. So, is that a hole? I love this shirt. My wife bought me this shirt, and I think I got a hole. No, it's just a piece of lint. Sorry. I wish I was more professional. Oh, it's just a piece of lint. I was about to say, I thought I had a hole in my shirt. My wife bought me this shirt because she knows I peaked in Brooklyn. So I I met my wife in Brooklyn, and I went to college in Brooklyn, and I went to some of the best live shows to see Gil Scott-Heron Everything from way far back as Gil Scott Heron to up to Dead Prez. So anyway, every now and then she'll come and give me something with Brooklyn on it, which I enjoy. And I like to try to pretend that I'm from Brooklyn. When people don't know me, never met me, don't know nothing about me, I tell them I'm from Brooklyn. But quickly they hear my Kansas City twang and they be like, this dude ain't from Brooklyn, and I get caught. So perpetrating a fraud. But anyway, I digress. The United States, you know, is you going to weep for them? It's so hard. It's so hard. That has been trying for decades to develop a definition of terrorism that exempted multinational corporations and Western nations. So they wanted to be able to define terrorism, to create laws around terrorism, and enforce, prosecute, convict, and incarcerate, or if it's an individual actor, or if it's a state sponsor of terrorism, they can invade, destabilize, sanction, blockade. But every time the United States and its allies define racism, there's a bunch of scholars, sociologists, legal experts that go in and say, well, this is the fixed definition of racism. And now we look at the definition, the laws, and then we go to actions of the CIA, FBI, ATF, local police departments, the U.S. government, its various bureaucrats, its elected officials, and you motherfuckers are all terrorists. The United States is a state sponsor of terrorism. And like I said, for the longest time, the United States has always had wanted this air of legitimacy, was very important. Let me tell you something. And we take this shit lightly. I'm going to talk about this more. We take so much shit very lightly. We say things, we hear things, we claim to understand things, but we don't really grasp them. But the United States, like there have been several books published. Probably the most popular is Yurugu. Probably after that, The Psychopathic Racial Personality. Probably after that, what would probably be the third? I'm speaking from my own list. You might have your different list. Maybe the Iceman's Inheritance, that talk about the unique psychology of people who identify as white. And some people say Europeans, some people say Western, some people say even the American psyche. Some white scientists don't like to blanket white people, so they come up with this evaluation of, like, there's books about the Republican brain or the conservative mindset. But all in all, there's even corporations that talk about, there's a really popular documentary I think everybody should watch called The Corporation. And they basically, like, corporations are psychopaths. Now, corporations are a uniquely white invention. If we did not have European Western capitalism, yes, the ISIS papers, I got some issues with the ISIS papers, but I want to do a review of the ISIS papers. Thank you for mentioning that, Roman. Because that's one of, I want to review. I'm going to do a Brodialo book review of the ISIS papers. I've already done a review of the Iceman's Inheritance. Go check that out on my other channel, Diallo. But corporations, and in this documentary, they were like, corporations are psychopaths. Now, what that is called personification, psychological projection, where we turn something that is not a living, real, or human entity, and we impose human features or characteristics onto that. So a corporation is nothing but a sheet of paper. Or more accurately, where even if you go to court, if you've ever been in litigation, if you've ever ran a business, which I've had the unfortunate position of owning a business and having contracts with other businesses, and then those other business entities, those artificial entities, and my artificial entity had contracts with one another, and then we go to court, and then the court kicked us out of court and said, you guys need to go to moderation. You need to go and try to moderate this before you take it to court, which I was glad, because the company we were up against had 1,000,000 times more money than us. But anyway, when you get to look at that, you'll see even the legal system says, well, these are artificial entities. These are not real persons. But for the sake of legality, for the sake of understanding distributions, for the sake of creating and enforcing contracts, we will pretend like these things are real. But so in the corporation, there'd be like, basically, if a corporation was a person, a corporation would be a psychopath. And I think also we need to talk about the history of corporations, the development of the LLC. The LLC is one of the most evil entities invented. It was invented by a European monarch, and the LLC was strictly invented to facilitate European imperialism. And it's really disgusting today. Y'all remember when Slutty Vegan went to some black HBCU and gave every HBCU an LLC? And I'm sure if you're on social media, you see black folks on here talking about their LLC. They're holding up and so proud. And we're so proud that we're playing this reindeer game of limited liability, forming our own corporations and rising in the ranks of the capitalist economy. But all that aside, LLCs are monstrosities. But kind of backing that up, LLCs are nothing more than conglomerates, people coming together. So if an LLC or multinational corporation is a psychopath, that means the people who conceptualize, conceive, constructed, own, direct, manage are psychopaths. Those are psychopaths. If I say that Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and Hinduism, and let me stop there, I've already offended like 7 to 8 billion people. Let me try to find the 1 billion people who ain't caught up in a murder that I haven't offended. But these are male chauvinist murder cults. And Christianity is a body of believers. Christianity unto itself is nothing. It's just a label. It's an umbrella. Just like corporations are nothing but a bunch of people engaged in behaviors. So anyway, if corporations are psychopaths, that means the people who can, like I said, conceive, operate, they're psychopaths. You can't have a psychopathic, evil corporation without psychopathic, evil people. And if something is maintained, as Dr. Bobby E. Wright stated, over generation, then it must have, you can speculate, there has to be a biological component. It's not enough just to say, well, they teach, they preach, they instruct, they motivate, they incentivize. But when you can have the majority of the people over a multitude of generations exhibit the same type of behaviors, there must be a biological genetic component. All that to say that if the entities we create are bad, we're bad. And a lot of times we create those entities in order for us to unload our sins on it. You know, I'm a good man. It's just the devil made me do it. The devil. And they even have religious rituals, especially in like Orthodox Judaism, where they go and put all their sins into a chicken. And then they ritually slaughter the chicken. And they claim they donate the chicken to hungry and feed other animals or some weird shit. But they murder the chicken because they put their sins off onto the chicken. And you're cleansed of sins. It's like a spiritual vomitorium. You know what a vomitorium is? When they would have these feasts in Rome, the apex or the founding seed of European civilization. When the wealthy people would have feast, they eat everything and fill their guts. Then they walk into this special room and they induce vomiting. And then they go back and eat themselves up more. That's how they do with sin. Oh, when I cleanse, I've been cleansed. When you find a Christian that says, I've been cleansed of my sins, the whole purpose of cleansing your sin is so you can clear your plate or you can clear your gut to fill it up with more. Not so that you can stop sinning. But I digress. Anyway, all that to go all the way back to say that these people are psychopathic. Sorry about that rabbit hole. I truly digress. All that to say that when people wait, sorry. Where was I? Oh, going all the way back. I need to stop checking my phone. I promise you, I'm gonna put my phone over here face down. I have to turn it off for notification. Okay, sorry, I'm responding to text. What's the reason for the rebrand and video deletion? Okay, that's a good question. I'll deal with that. I'll deal with that because that is a valid question. Yeah, I know a lot of going on, ain't a damn thing happening. Anyway, going all the way back to terrorism, I kind of lost my train of thought because I'm looking at all these texts coming through. Going all the way back to this problem with Luigi being charged with terrorism and Western powers having so much trouble defining terrorism and Western powers having this fixation on legitimacy. So Europeans from day one doing evil, but wanted to be defined as doing good. They want to say, well, we're not invading, we're settling. We're not invading, we're exploring. You know, we're not putting them in concentration camps, we're putting them on reservations. We're not committing genocide, we're Christianizing, we're civilizing. So that they haven't been broken of that impulse. You'll find the most wicked people in today's society define themselves as the most righteous. You'll find the most predatory people in today's society define themselves as under siege. You'll find the most thieving people in today's society claiming that someone's robbing me. So that's just a European Western characteristics that many of us are also to blame for. But can you even say Western? Because now a lot of victims, a lot of colonized people, a lot of enslaved people, a lot of subjugated people, a lot of colonized people cannot distinguish themselves from their oppressors. Or as like Yvette Carnell likes to say, we want to be made white. And a lot of these black people who want to be made white, they think white, they function white, they dream white, they sleep white, they do everything white. The only thing they don't have is white money. But a lot of us think if we think white, sleep white, behave white, eat white, then the money will come. If we build ourselves as white people, then we will eventually have white money. And we don't even understand that white money has never been justly or equally distributed amongst white folks. So even being made white, we forget there's a whole class of peasants, a whole class of that they've always concentrated their wealth at the top and never justly or equally distributed their resources. So even if we were made white, that would not free us from poverty, from tyranny, from atrocity. But I digress. Jesus, God damn it. It's all connected. All that to say is it's funny to see them continuing this struggle. They still have not found out how, because you have one individual who's been accused of, innocent. That man is innocent. But one individual who is accused of targeting another individual versus all of these white boys who've done mass shootings of civilians for political reasons. Dylan Roof was not labeled a terrorist, even though he wrote a political manifesto and had the desire to create a race war. The last major white boy that I know was classified, prosecuted, and executed as a terrorist. I might be some in between but Timothy McVeigh. So, and one thing about Timothy McVeigh is when he pulled up at the Muir Federal Building, he parked that truck right next to the nursery. Right next to the nursery. And so he was labeled a terrorist. Israel is not a state sponsor or a state terrorist. So they keep going and keep doing this. And it's just funny to me every time I see them label someone a terrorist and I go and look at how they define terrorist. And it's like that goddamn Spider-Man meme. Just like that Spider-Man meme. You know, it's like Jordan. Is Jordan a monarchy still? The government of Jordan is a terrorist nation. Venezuelan is a terrorist nation, but Israel and Saudi Arabia, nope. they good. But I digress. Anyway, that's the hypocrisy that they do, and we see that label is essentially meaningless, and it is a act of class war. And went in on class war. This is class war, and we don't even recognize what team we're on. Many of us wearing the wrong jersey. And even when we get the wrong jersey, we put that shit on backwards and inside out. Because class war without class analysis don't mean shit. But I digress. Okay, so anyway, let's talk about MAGAnomics. I was going to try to wait for Skip. You know, as you're waiting to hear from somebody and you're hearing from everybody except who you want to hear from, and that's not offending. If you're watching this and contacting me, I do want to hear from you too. It's good to hear from you. But when you're trying to hear from somebody in particular, and they go persona non gratis on you. But I digress. What I want to talk about today. See, we already 24 minutes in. This is a record, and we're going to go on topic. Today's show is MAGAnomics. And it's funny that the term MAGAnomics has not really reached mainstream appeal. Like, I don't hear people talking about MAGAnomics. And I remember when Obama was running for office, this black economist gave me a book on Obamanomics. And this is in early 2008 and before the implementation of Obamanomics. And I was like, it would be interesting, not good, but interesting to see if Obama could pull this off. There were some good policies in Freakonomics. Freakonomics is a racist piece of shit book. Freakonomics, I don't like that book. It's a whack ass book. It's a racist ass book, and it is basically a deflection. Freakonomics' basic argument is economics just can't be understood. There's this mysterious unseen hand. It's basically a re-rationalization of the unseen hand. And all these mysterious things happen in the arena of economics that we just can't explain. It's so freaky. And they literally argue things like, well, if a person has a black sounding name, they don't get called out for jobs. Isn't that freaky? No, it's not freaky. It's racism. It's institutional structural racism. See, the economics are predatory, racist, unjust, imbalanced, and right-leaning. But instead of condemning it, if you just say it's freaky, it's out of my hands. Nothing I can do. It's above me. So I really don't like Freakonomics, and I'm actually glad that nobody talks about Freakonomics anymore. But anyway, going on to MAGAnomics. As I said earlier, there's a lot of things that we say that are so common to us, and a lot of things that are common we don't give weight to. We don't give enough attention to. We let things just roll off our tongues and we don't really grasp them. There's things people say like global white supremacy. And global white supremacy, I hear everybody saying it. Global white supremacy, global white supremacy, global white. But I think we hear it so much, and it's a relatively new term. There was a time where Black people talked about the white power structure, talk about the man and stuff, and we didn't really understand how interconnected the systems were to each other, that this is a global system. And so I'm around so many Black people, and even white people now will talk about, yes, white supremacy and the white power structure, and we say it, but we don't live like we say global white supremacy is real. But when you see somebody acknowledge something, but don't believe or live or act as though it's real, to me, that person is in a state of psychosis. There is some abnormal mental conditioning. And I know, not that I'm exempt from it, the psychopathic racial personality that Bobby Wright said, that people who are born of this culture, who navigate this culture, who embrace uncritically, exist within, accept, and internalize this culture, you cannot be sane, healthy, and a complacent person. You can't be complacent and sane in an omnicidal system. But Black people, we also fucking crazy. And I don't mean to be ableist or even to demean people that have more intense forms of mental illness or mental illness that does not allow them to negotiate or navigate the system. Because if I have a mental illness that does not allow me to work a job, to attend school and successfully graduate, to pay bills, to maintain a residence and a car, then they recognize it as mental illness. But if I'm sick in the fucking head, but I can do those things, then it's not defined as mental illness. If I hoard cats, if I was sitting here as Bro Diallo and I had in my small home with my wife and child, and I had 60 cats here, and I was refused to have a reasonable number of house pets, if I have too many house pets, or if I have a bunch of magazines and newspapers stacked up to the wall, and I just can go to a maze and we can't even fully enjoy our home because there's so many magazines and newspapers here, or if all over town I had all these storage units full of just stuff that I can't use, that I can't access, then people would be like, he's not well. But if I hoard money, I was sitting here with a stack of money and I'm like, if I had a money, thousands of dollars, and I'm here like, if the money talk, I ain't hearing. If it ain't money talking, I ain't listening. And y'all look back here and you see gold bars and stacks of cash. And I had banks all over town just full of more money than I could ever utilize. I own dozens of properties that I can't even live in. If I'm like Puff Daddy said, I got so many spots, I don't even buy luggage. I own so much property all over the world, I don't even have to pack when I travel. Then I would be celebrated. But in the same mentality, the same mental corruption, the same mental dysfunction that would motivate one to hoard newspapers or cats is identical to the one that motivates you to hoard money. And one people we seek to institutionalize and treat, and other people we allow them to govern our lives, to control our institutions. What am I? Uh-oh. I'm sorry. So anyway, we say shit. Back to my point going into this. We say things And stop saying things and not meaning it. Say it with your chest. If you say something, really grasp what you're saying. Stop saying white supremacy in casual conversation, because y'all don't really mean it. Y'all don't really grasp it. And white supremacy does not mean white people govern the world. And so that's a problem, because white people are in control. White people being in control is not simply, well, they get to press the buttons and we don't. They get to sit up front of the train and we have to sit in the back. They get to eat caviar while we can have to eat fried chicken. Them ruling the world means that, as European scholars and scientists have asserted when they get honest, that Western culture has a death urge. So white supremacy isn't just about them having more stuff, them being able to commit crimes and get lesser sentences. It's not just about them having better accommodations, or them being able to turn on mass media and see validating images of themselves, representation. Them being able to say, well, my natural hair and my blonde eyes are the standard of beauty. It's not even just about them having a longer lifespan. It is about them dictating reality. And we have seen through the course of history that they have a death urge. Their motivation and drive is to exploit everything to extinction. We see them changing the very atmosphere. They change the very atmosphere, the very concentration of oxygen in the air. The chemical makeup of the atmosphere is being disrupted. Deforestation, mass extinction. Europeans are having the same impact as the meteor that took out the dinosaurs. Every year, hundreds of mammal, plant, reptile, ocean species go to extinction. Every single ecosystem and biosphere on the planet is being disrupted. So it ain't just about someone being able to be convicted of multiple felonies and still become president. That shit is annoying as fuck. And I say this, and when I say it, it's like, the way I see our people functioning. The people, not just the masses. Bless their hearts. They're the masses for a reason. But the people who claim to be conscious, I don't see us behaving as though we really understand and we really accept what global white supremacy is. What it really means. They are unfit to rule. Forget about their unworthiness to rule. But they're unfit to rule. Right now, we have all of the understanding and all of the technology and the full capacity to stop the ravages of climate change. But the European says, well, we have to negotiate and determine how can we stop climate change while preserving and advancing the system of white hegemony and capitalism. How do we put out the fire and keep the flames? We want to stop the heat. How do we stop the damage of the heat but maintain the fire? It is not possible. And they have determined for themselves and the rest of the world, death is more preferable than a reduction in profits. Death is more preferable than the withdrawal of our military infrastructure. And not just the death of me and you, who cares? Not just the death of them and their own fucking children, but the death of the polar bears, the death of the microbes the microscopic life forms that are necessary to maintain life in your body. There is more DNA from bacteria than DNA from human DNA in your body. Your body unto itself is a biome and an ecosystem. And inside your body, every generation has more and more concentration of artificially manufactured products like plastic, artificial hormone mimicking chemicals. We know this. There is a capacity to stop, reverse, reduce, and cease this. But the decision is consciously and deliberately made not to do it because it could hinder profits. And the vast majority of people, y'all I have a good brother that just told me, I'm a capitalist and I make profits too. I said, you don't make profits, you make earnings. I had a little business and people are like, you're against capitalism, but you have a business and you're making profits. I said, I've never had a profitable business. I've had a successful business. I've had a couple of successful business. I had a successful vegan restaurant. I had a successful catering business, vegan catering. And I had a successful packaging wholesale businesses where we sold to retailers as opposed. And I had a very successful little media company, Guerrilla Media. And in all of those, I didn't make profits because you got black people waking up, taking showers, getting dressed, and then walking in and unlocking a business. At that very fucking moment, you're no longer making profit. You're making earnings. We don't even know the difference between profits and earnings, but I don't want to go down that. I'm digressing. All I want to say is, all this to say is, I wish we would stop, because there was a time where black folks didn't talk about white folks because it was very risky. You didn't come out your face at white folks. You couldn't even, there were even black people that were afraid to, there was a time where we were afraid to say white. There's even some Negroes now, they're afraid to say white. They're afraid to say black. They get on and say, people who look like me, people of color. You know, there are entities and certain groups of people. So I saw it as an advance that black folks were able to actually name things. I don't take it for granted that we're able to say shit. That our ancestors, my great-grandfather, Grandpa Bowie, taught me a lot of shit. He taught me how to tend a yard, make household repairs, how to prime a lawnmower engine. I was so proud that I knew how to prime a lawnmower engine or repair a lawnmower engine and maintain a lawnmower. And now I have an electric lawnmower, so that all that. But I really do appreciate that. And I'm able to say shit that he would never dream of saying. This is a man who came to adulthood under Jim Crow and raised a black family in one of the most racist regions of the world today, the Midwest. That more insidious, erosive racism is even sometimes more deadly than the overt, open racism. And I don't take for granted that I'm in a better position than him. We are in a better position than our ancestors, and we squander. We do less with more. So I'm glad we can say it, but now we take it for granted. And I hear more and more people that acknowledge global white supremacy, but it's real peculiar to me that people will say it, acknowledge it, but don't understand it. And there's some other things that are more, relevant to what I'm saying today, because one thing you hear people say, and if nobody said it, the moment you hear it, it becomes immediately clear. Everybody knows about the frog in the pot. When I say the frog in the pot, you know exactly what I'm getting at. There's this old parable or metaphor that you put a frog in a pot of tepid water and you slowly increase the temperature. And the frog doesn't notice. And so people always talk about, oh, it's a parable. And the frog gets slowly boiled alive. And we talk about that's how things in society works. Things get progressively worse in society. And because we're in society, we're inside of it. So our perspective is skewed. And so as things slowly get worse, we just keep going about our days, going about our lives as if nothing's happening. And by the time we recognize that we're in a boiling pot, it's too late. Now, everybody knows this parable. Everybody's heard it. Many of us have said it. We claim to understand it. But as the United States goes further and further to fascism, all you people saying there's no change, there's no difference, it's all the same, ain't nothing changed. It's all the same. Ain't no difference between Democrats, Republican, Kamala, Trump. It's all the same. If it's all the same, then that means the water temperature hasn't changed, even if the water is hot. And you think, but if you say there's nothing changed, and you're like, it's all, that means, well, the water's boiling. That means you believe either the water is at its peak temperature and can't get any hotter. Things are as bad as they can possibly be and can't get any worse. Or the water's staying the same. So everybody that's saying there ain't no difference between Democrats and Republicans, that means you're saying either we're at the peak temperature, there's no increase to be had, or we're at some stage between tepid and boiling, and this particular time in history, the temperature has not been turned up. And some of y'all are so dumb to say, well, Trump is a decrease in temperature. We defeated the evil Democrats. So it has to be something. The transition from neoliberalism to overt fascism is either a reduction in temperature, a maintenance in temperature, or an increase in temperature. If you think both parties are the same, then you're saying there's a maintenance of temperature. And if you think both parties are the same and we are either, then where are we? If you think both parties are the same, where do we stand? Is the water at full boil and things can't get any worse? Is the water at peak temperature and can't go any higher? Are we boiling? If things are the same and we're not boiling, that means things have not gotten worse. They've pretty much reached the same. They've been maintained. Or do you think the temperature has been reduced? Because I keep hearing this both parties rhetoric. Oh, they're both parties this, both parties that. So answer my question. Are we at peak? Have we been sustained at the same, or have we been reduced? Because when it's very easy, like I said, we need to start speaking clearly. If we're going to speak publicly, if you want to be anti-intellectual, anti-analytical, anti-academic, if you want to be regressive, or just plain mindless, it's fine. You could be that in your own head. But if you want to speak publicly, debate publicly, engage publicly, be seen and heard publicly, you at least owe it to people to put on your intellectual deodorant. If you're going to go out in public, you should take some measures of hygiene. If you want to just sit at home, figuratively, then you can sit at home and nobody has any right to kick in your door and complain about your hygiene. But if you come out in public, you should have some consideration for your fellow person that has to come into contact with you physically and mentally. So which is it? See? And this is another thing. They have the same goal. So what are you saying? That a Trump election means nothing. Trump's election has no greater depth or meaning. It's just a continuation of, it would have been no difference if Kamala was elected. So where are we in this boiling pot analogy? Because Esme, all the same characters are saying the same stuff that they don't really suss out. There's no penetration. I love to open this up and have people explain this to me because no one has answered my question. They just both the same, da 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 da. And I come to you and your doctor says, hey, you have stage 4 cancer, or you have stage 1 cancer. You have a malignant melanoma. You have a benign tumor. Oh, cancer's cancer. They're all cancer. Cancer's the same. And your doctor will say, I have to put you in for a psych eval. And then I come to you and say, well, no, cancer are not the same. And different cancers require different levels of a treatment, and different cancers denote a different levels of advancement of the disease. Oh, you support cancer. You said that stage 5 cancer is worse than stage 2 cancer, so you support cancer. You don't acknowledge that all cancers are the same. But I noticed that people who comfortably can make that, because I can't afford it. Me as someone who stands in opposition to the systems and institutions of capitalism and white hegemony, I can't afford the comfort of saying it's all the same. I have to look at this shit and see where it's going. I have to look and try to understand and comprehend because I want to counter. Not only do I want to counter this system, I want to educate, equip, and motivate other people to counter it. So I don't have the convenience of saying it's all the same, ain't no difference. Even when many of the symptoms are the same, and even many of the treatments or remedies might be the same, I still have to know the distinct differences. Great. You see, it's all the same characters. It's all the same characters. And making all these surface ridiculous, both as if, let's just go with lead. Both are anti-African. Many of them, they're both anti-African. They're both white supremacy. They're both fascist. Now, I wouldn't say they're both fascist. They're both imperialist. And here's the thing. Imperialism has had many faces, has many strategies, has many tactics. Imperialism has ebbed and flowed. They have created and broken alliances. So even under just saying, well, this person's it, just calling someone an imperialist tells you very little about them. How to get, where is it located? You look at the Portuguese, the Spanish, the French, the Germans, the Italians, the British, all of these empires, they all had different practices, strategy. If you look at Western imperialism, and then you look at these new actors and new emergence. And that's why we could be like, well, Islamic imperialism. I was talking to a black scholar that told me there's no such thing as Islamic imperialism. When you got Muslims from Indonesia to Senegal, and you just think all these people from Indonesia to Senegal and more simplicity. Well, he's saying bad things about the Republicans, so therefore he must be a Democrat. I'm telling you that revolution is an intellectual endeavor, and menticide and anti-intellectualism is hindering our capacity to understand and destroying our capacity to counter these phenomena. But I digress. Let's move on. Yes, because I just said they're neoliberals. The GOP has moved from neoliberalism to avert fascism. But why am I arguing with the comments? Let me just move on with my discussion. And y'all can come on here live and make jackasses of yourself on camera as opposed to making jackasses of yourself in the comments. I welcome you. So we often We often talk about things like the frog in the pot, or what I love here, people talk about divide and conquer, divide and conquer, divide and conquer. And at the very moment they talk about division and conquer, they rest well in divide and conquer. So I would just like to challenge everyone listening to, when we talk about phenomena related to power, the state, our liberation, try to embody those things. Try to really, when you express that point of view, when you express phenomena, try to really, for your own self, really go into what that really means. And simply calling something out does not render you exempt from it. Yeah, people act like frogs in the pot. People sleepwalking. But we divide and conquered. You have to say, a lot of times when I hear people who talk about these phenomena, they are not only a part of it, engaged in it, a victim of it, but they perpetuate it and advance it at the same time they denounce it, which makes capitalism so brilliant, that have people attacking the very thing that they are advancing and think they're against it. You have Black people rising up in corporate America and think that Black people becoming titans of industry, Black people becoming CEOs or becoming billionaires, is a challenge to white hegemony, to white power. Tyler Perry Studios putting out anti-African, pro-Christian propaganda is somehow a challenge to the white propaganda machine. Obama's election was somehow evidence of our capability and worthiness, and us coming to power and us advancing. When Obama's election, I would argue, was evidence, especially now that we're a decade out of his administration, is evidence of our regression. Obama's election was not a sign of progress. It is a sign of regression, because it demonstrated that we pose absolutely no threat. We are better assets to the systems than a threat. Make this part of your daily affirmation, even though it's negative as hell. In their effort to control and dominate the world, white people have more Black allies than Black enemies. So moving on. It's funny how the right wing, the conservatives, MAGA, I'm just going to talk about the MAGA sphere, but that's kind of an umbrella, because even in Trump's first administration, I said Trump has a very unique coalition. Trump in his coalition has Zionists, genocidal Zionists, and neo-Nazis. He has libertarians and authoritarians. He has all these people who naturally, he has secular right-wing conservatives, and he has theocratic right-wing evangelicals. So he has overt misogynist, sexist, and daughters of the Confederacy, Southern women. What's her name from Alaska? Can't think of her name, but she had all this rhetoric about Mama Bear. What's that the vice presidential candidate? What's that? Can't believe. Anyway, the Maverick. Anyway, you had Sarah Palin. Thank you, Hassan. Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin. So you have these soccer mom, mama bears, lipstick. What did he say? I'm a bear in lipstick and protect my babies. So you have these empowered white women and these overt misogynists and sexist. Trump has a very, very interesting coalition. And what unites all these people is racist psychopathy. Because even though their agendas, their desire, Trump literally has the billionaire elites who are saying we want to create robots and self-driving trucks so that we don't have to hire employees. And he has white union members. So he's promising to both bring jobs to America and create a robot workforce. The same man that wants to bring back the same, he has literally SpaceX and now Jeff Bezos with his own billionaire space program. He has billionaires who say we're going to colonize the stars because the earth is dying. And at the same time, he has a bunch of white people saying we voted for Trump to save America. So you got one hand that people are going to get money to go colonize Mars and colonize the stars and building doomsday bunkers. And at the same time, the man who's endorsed by people who are saying this is over with, human civilization is obsolete, and we need to go on and become post-human, so we need to merge with machines and colonize the stars. And the people say we need to save America. God has blessed America, and America is the nation on a hill. And so if you look at the various factions that support Trump and their agendas, their priorities, their values, they all would naturally be enemies. And they were enemies. And they do become enemies. If you look at most people who support Trump, including Trump's vice president is on record saying, yo, Trump is the greatest threat to American democracy. Go look up Trump's vice presidents prior to him joining the MAGA movement and what he had to say about Trump. And then this motherfucker can look at Trump's first vice president, Mike Pence, and see Trump supporters running up and down the halls of Congress saying, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence. And this motherfucker's like, that's where I want to be. All of the people, over 40 members of Trump's previous cabinets was like, fuck Trump. He's horrible. And now a bunch of other people. This is a race of psychopaths. It is a psychopathic Urugu administration. Full-blooded Urugu. And see, I told you I was going to stop looking at my phone. I lied. That's my son. My oldest boy out there in the world. And he's coming over. My oldest is coming over to bum dinner. His mother told him, but anyway. So anyway, he has all these factions. And you look at all these factions. Now, some of y'all who say there's no difference between Democrats or Republicans, I'm wasting my time and you're wasting your time. They're all the same. I don't need to know all that. I just know that they're all bad. They're all capital, all white. And I say this all the time. If you were a member of the white elite, even if you weren't a member of the white elite, you were an agent of the white elite. And you went into their boardrooms, their conference room. If you were a member of an Illuminati, and the Illuminati sitting at sitting around their cauldron in their robes, saying, how do we continue to dominate the world and turn everybody gay? And you set up and say, hey, ain't no difference. They're all black. A Nigerian, a South African, a Black American, a Jamaican, Black Christians, Black Muslims, Black conservatives, Black radicals. They all the same. They all want to take down the system. They all want, and ain't no difference between none of them. They would kick you out of the Illuminati. But you could be a member of the black community. I think anybody in the black community say, no difference. The corporations, the people in power, they all, the Democrats, the Republicans, the Congress, the Senate, the Supreme Court, local governors, local governments, state senators and state governors and local the Ku Klux Klan and the skinheads and the Oath Keepers. We got all these factions of white power. We got all these components of white power, and they've been dominating the world for over 1,400 years. And we just think, oh, this is just a big balloon. It's just all just one big mass that's all the same. And we don't need to understand the intricate differences. And we go look at their fucking COINTELPRO papers. We go look at their documents, and you see they were like, there are differences. The Kawaiidists, the black nationalists, the Pan-Africanists, the cultural nationalists. Look at all these black factions that are discontent with racism, that are fighting back. We got even within the organization, you got black people who claim to be nonviolent. You got SNCC, and then you got what's the other one? You got the Southern Baptists. You got the SCC. You got all these different organizations. Even within that, even within the same organization, look at within 20 years, they had Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale giving SCLC. Thank you, God, that just wouldn't come out. Appreciate it. Let me tell you, my problem is I don't have my green tea. Let me calm it down. My brain's racing, telling me to stay patient. You don't know that I'm cool as a fan, gat in hand. I don't want to blast her, man. Let me cool it down. Cool it now. So you look at that with the Black Panther Party. They were like, the Black Panther Party is gaining in popularity. We have other black nationalist, armed black nationalist parties that are also vying for instructions. There are brewing conflicts, there are existing conflicts, and there are potential conflicts. These conflicts are based on personality, based on goals and agendas and priorities, petty jealousies, and all these things. They work up profiles on each of these individuals. Can you imagine somebody in the CIA and COINTELPRO saying, ain't no difference between Chairman Fred Hampton and Huey P. Newton? Or somebody in South Africa and their intelligence apparatus, or somebody in the Mossad saying, ain't no difference between Steve Biko and Nelly Mandela. Let me tell you something. Any black person, they don't have respect for black people. If they sit here and watch black people suffer generations of oppression and watch our oppressors, our enemies, thwart every effort for liberation and empowerment and resistance that we've ever constructed, and say it's all the same. Don't bother that. Black people are not worthy of scholarship. Black people are not worthy of analysis. Black people are not worthy of studying our enemies and the vulnerabilities and the choke points. Oh, okay. Esme's coming along a little better. They're different, but same goals. You're getting closer. You still ain't hit the mark yet. If you listen more and type less, you might get there. But I told y'all, we got Dark Brandon, now we got Dark MAGA, and now y'all got Dark Diallo. I'm gonna say what I mean and mean what I say. Not that I ain't been doing that, but I'm unleash myself, because we about to go to 4 years of no different than Kamala. So we about to go 4 years of the exact same thing we just went through. Yes, I am. I sure is. I is. Okay, where was he? These Trump MAGA. I know I said I was gonna calm it down. I'm gonna recenter myself. And Skip's not here. See, I come on here and I'm like, I don't even have to do no preparation because Skip is here. And if I get out of line, Skip will check me. So if I offend you today, please blame Skip. Because there's no difference between me and Skip. We have the same goals. Me and Skip want Pan-African unification, Pan-African revolutionization, and Pan-African liberation. That's our same goal. And Skip is living down in the rural South. He accepts Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior, and he believes in eating meat, family values, and toting your gun for self-defense. Me, I'm a tree-hugging vegan. I'm in favor of gun control and limiting guns, and we have the same goal. And if anybody wanted to come and say, well, I want to subvert what Skip and Coon are doing, and they just like Skip, they want the same thing, so they're the same dude. Now, imagine if Skip and I had trillions of dollars in nuclear bombs, and you were so foolish to say, hey, they all the same because they want the same thing. So obviously, if you want the same thing, you're the same. Oh, that's a question that's interesting. I'm going to get to these questions quick. Let me get through what I'm saying. So anyway, Trump has this faction. And what unites his faction is white identity, irrationality. As I stated earlier, the people who do all the stealing believe they are being robbed, to the point where Trump has an agenda to provide reparations for white people. He said that any white people that didn't get into school, that didn't receive a job, that didn't receive a promotion within an institution, public or private, that was engaged in DEI, affirmative action, any white person. So if you're a white person that applied for a job at Kellogg or applied to be a student at Harvard and you didn't get in, and that school at the time they denied you access had a affirmative action program, DEI, or some other type of leveling program or leveling policy, then you as a white person can receive compensation. And if the institution does not compensate you, if the institution does not compensate you, then the federal government will make it good. And the same motherfuckers that was like, don't vote for Dems, they don't support reparations. You go from a political party that had a pro-reparations factions. There are congressmen and local officials in the Democratic Party that support reparations. And so there was a burgeoning reparations faction within the Democratic Party. You go from a party that doesn't wholly support reparations to a party that not only rejects reparations, but asserts that Black people are indebted to white people and that white people are owed reparations from the set-asides and benefits that Black people were given as a result of our enslavement, Jim Crow, discrimination. And there ain't no difference. And to acknowledge that difference means that you support one or the other. Whew. And I'm telling I'm hitting, because if you're just glancing at the comments like I am, I'm going at these people. They can't handle it. Remember that song? Just can't handle it. They feeling like they on fire, because here's the problem. There's this fallacy of previous investment. The fallacy of previous investment means if I put a lot of work or effort or resources into something, it's hard for me to let it go, even if it's a lost cause. So if I had to shout out to Mike. Mike is a dude. I'm about to digress, but I'm going to put a star here and get back to it. I had this dude named Mike Renty. I was broke as hell. I was raised in poverty. But I had a well-to-do family member. And I got into this big fight. Shout out to Rip the Crip. I don't know. He's turned his life around. He still Rip the Crip to me, but shout out to Rip. He's just Rip now. But I got into a big fight. There was a guy bullying me at school, and I called my dude. I came up with him. See, I didn't have no street cred, but luckily, because I grew up in the hood, I had dudes who had street cred that had, some level of responsibility for me, because I was their little homie, even though I never jumped off the porch. So I didn't have no street cred, but I knew people. They didn't let me ride out with them. They didn't let me really hang with them like that, but they were like, they know my name, right? They know me. They came up with me. I used to crack jokes and play ball with them when we were little kids. So I was like, I'm sick of these cats bullying me. So I made a call. I was like, yo, these dudes, they messing with me, blah, 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 blah. And so I called up the big homie. He came up there and shut the whole school down. And I got my little get back and I got expelled. So I ended up going to a private school. And my aunt came and saw that I was in trouble. And she's like, oh, he's wayward. I wasn't wayward. That wasn't even me. I don't know if you remember that day in Southeast Fieldhouse. Rip, if you're watching and listening. But I took the heat for that. They were like, man, Diallo was getting bullied and he shut the whole field house down. No, I made a call the day before and dude came through and shut it down. Like, leave my man alone. Don't make me have to come back up here. But then I took all the heat for that because he then went back to the streets. And then, so I got suspended. She put me in Catholic school. And when I went to Catholic school, I didn't really have shit. And I couldn't really keep up with the other kids in Catholic school. So anyway, I would look for ways to make money so I could afford the uniforms and so that I could at least appear to be as affluent as my classmates. And, you know, like my freshman year, I was really afraid people would find out that I lived in the projects, lived in public subsidized housing, that I was on food stamps. And I was very afraid of that. And it was kind of stupid because it's going to get out. People know. And even though I went to a school where they wore uniforms, cats be coming to school in Jordans. We had to wear the same slacks and the same shirts, but, you know, dudes would have Louis and Gucci belts. They moms bought them little drape chains. So everybody knew who had and who didn't. And in that, I would look for ways to make money. So one day I was heading home and there was this sports shop. And this guy was working at the sports shops, and I go in there and look at the cool shoes, look at the fitted caps. And back then the starter jackets was hot fire. And I met this dude named Mike. I ain't gonna say his last name. I don't know where he is. His name was Mike, and he was from California. And he had this really cool car. It was a white Ford Escort. That's how long ago this was. And he's like, yo, you want to make some money? Because I was like, well, can I work for store credit? So I got these. And this is weird. I'm embarrassed. But Eazy-E, if you go back when Eazy came out with Eazy Does It, he had these fingerless weightlifting gloves that were like woven gloves. And I'm like, man, I'm going to get me some of them Eazy-E gloves. And then people think I'm as cool as Eazy-E because that's how the adolescent mind thinks. I wanted the Eazy-E gloves. I wanted a KC starter cap, a fitted KC cap. And I'm like, let me work for Star Credit. So I went to work for this dude. And his thing was his aunt had given him a house. His aunt owed several properties. And his aunt told him, I had a tenant and the tenant tore up the house and then the house caught fire and the house wasn't properly insured. And this house is just a menace. It's just a burden. So he's like, Auntie, he had just broke up with his girl in California and was like, yo, Auntie, I'm going to move from California to Kansas City. I'm going to rehab this house basically from the foundation up. And then I'm going to live there, build up, work, and then I'm gonna buy next house because real estate even back then was much cheaper in Kansas City. And so he was like, I'm gonna hire some young cats. And so I was putting shingles on roofs, running copper pipe and wires, and I was in there working. And he would give me store credit, like 5 on the dollar. So I'd earn $1, but if he let me get it started, it was a good time. And I was tricking people. And people like, oh, bro, Diallo got them fingerless Eazy-E gloves. He got that KC starter cap. He can't be eating government cheese. He can't be living in subsidized housing. He must have turned his life around. I tricked everybody. And he was working on that house off the word of his aunt. And we got that house together. And it's really sad because when my wife and I were in Kansas City, I used to be like, yeah, you see that house? I built that house. Like, I was even proud of that house. And his auntie, when she saw that house was coming together, he was brought in all new appliances and everything, getting the house up to city code. And he had planned to live there and then secure another property. And he's basically, I'm getting this house for sweat equity. And when the house was all but complete, his aunt came up and was like, thank you. Give me back my house. And he was like, word. And she was like, hell yeah. She played him. And he didn't have no contract. He didn't have the property deed. He just saw an opportunity. It was like, this is my blood. This is my mama's sister. She can't do me wrong. And he came to take advantage of and she played him. She played him. And you know me. I'm like, so what we gonna do? We gonna take our shingles off this roof? We gonna rip out this copper piping? And he's like, nah. And he looked at me. I'll never forget this. I say this all the time. He looked at me and say, look, man, I ain't no diehard motherfucker. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Because, you know, this was the late 80s, early 90s. And he's like, I'm not no diehard motherfucker. I say this all the time. I'm not no diehard motherfucker. Meaning that I've already invested. I got played. And so instead of getting a house, I get a very hard lesson. And I'm going to value this lesson as much as I value the house. I'm going to value this lesson as much as I value the house. And he's like, I could take her to court. I could go in here and ransack the house and create a greater rift, because me and my aunt, we're done. But then I could do some things to create greater rifts and greater disruption of my family, get into it with my mom. He's like, I played myself. I should have protected myself on paper. I shouldn't have taken her word, all of this. But he said, I'm not no diehard motherfucker. And later I learned a more sophisticated way of saying that. There's a book called The Long Emergency. And there's this author and scholar by the name of Kunstler. And Kunstler said there is the fallacy of previous investment, which is the same thing as saying I ain't no diehard motherfucker, which both means even though I put a lot of effort into this, I've even built my whole self-perception, my whole identity around this thing. Once I found out that it is a zero-sum game, once I find out that this is no longer a productive endeavor, but something that is hindering me or hindering others I care about, no matter how much I put into it, I'm willing to walk away or let go. And even though I can't say, well, I learned that lesson, because there's a lot of things, you know, because long after I'm like, I'm not no Christian no more. I left the Christian church when I was 14. But all of my Christian indoctrination and the irrationality, the sexism, the homophobia that was indoctrinated into me through accepting, reading, and accepting the lessons of the Christian faith, or sunk cost fallacy, that's another one. It took me well into my 20s. It took me over a decade and I thought I was free. Like, hey, I don't believe in no Jesus, white Jesus, the white man's religion. But my identity, my values, my conclusions, my outlook, my values were all Christian, heavily. Even when I was toying around with Islam, even when I was toying around with Ifa. And I, in my house, I had ancestral shrines, and I was reading and learning about the Orisha, and I was going to rituals, Yoruba rituals. I was at the Vodun Haitian drum circles. Even when I was listening to Sizzler and hanging out with the Rastaman them and learning about, you know, the prophet of Garvey and the God of Jah Rastafari, Haile Selassie. Even when I was going through all this and learning about different spiritual systems and belief systems that weren't only not Christian, but blasphemous in terms of Christianity, the root of my values, the root of my perception of the world, how I navigated the world, was as a man indoctrinated from birth to be a Methodist and then a Baptist. So I was a diehard motherfucker. So I'm saying that to believe that if you reach a conclusion that is surface, that is inadequate, that is inconclusive, that is you know, as Chairman Fred, you reach conclusions that don't conclude. Don't double down on that shit off some ego shit. Once you get new evidence, once you get a broader understanding, a broader scope, don't double down on it. You ain't even got to make it, because nobody's, to be honest with you, anybody that's really trying to engage and educate people, ain't nobody going to attack you for saying, damn, I was wrong. One thing that makes Malcolm so great, because a lot of what Malcolm said was relatively elementary. Malcolm reminding us, you are a man to be treated as a human being on this earth. But Malcolm was in perpetual transformation. You go from a petty street thug to an indoctrinated cult member to a revolutionary Pan-Africanist, all before you hit 40 years old. It's unbelievable. What impresses us most? You go reread the autobiography of Malcolm X. It's not where he landed that makes him such a phenomenal figure. It's his evolution and ability to continually grow. Malcolm X is a brother. He gets new information, gets new analysis, get new changes, and he would adjust it to the point that's cost him his fucking life. A lesser man would still be running around here with slick back hair and a bow tie talking about the white devils. A lesser man. But I digress. No, but I can. I appreciate that, Bloom. We can get into that. But all that to say, now let's get back to the thing. I'm saying that everybody that's like Diallo's so damn wrong. I think more people are attacking and challenging what I say, not because it's because they not diehard motherfuckers. Don't be no diehard motherfuckers. Let it go. Let it go. But let's move on. And so anyway, Trump, and it's real funny. I was thinking about this the other day. I heard a name I hadn't heard in a few months, George Soros. Because I heard this white boy says that he saw a headline that said George Soros had died. And so he said he celebrated it. And then he ran to look to see if it was true and found out it wasn't true. And that made him sad for the whole day. And I always laughed whenever people would talk about George Soros. George Soros was such a bad person, because the very people that hate George Soros and call George Soros a puppet master can watch literally on record, at least on paper, the richest man of the world give $250 million to the president and not fear billionaire controller manipulation of the government. That just shows you the level of delusion and disconnect in this MAGA movement. And not even, there are several billionaires. Peter Thiel is probably one of the most dangerous presidents. These libertarian billionaires. And like I said, let's get more into it. What I was saying is that the government now is going from a neoliberal economy, a neoliberal government, to a libertarian kleptocracy. And now people will say, well, the government, people always steal in government. People always, it is different. And the strategies and tactics to employ to challenge it, or to respond, or to endure, because many of y'all don't want to really challenge white power. You just want to be able to endure their ravages as opposed to ending their ravages. Oh, look at this. Sensible bruh. You really think you cooked, huh? You really think you cooking? But go on, y'all. Listen. The more hate I get in the comments, I know I'm shining a light in your little dark crevices of your mind. So I don't mind the comments and the hate. But then again, I also told that I focus too much on the negative when I get a lot of love too. Yeah. Both of these motherfuckers. Two Afrikaners. Two foreign billionaires. Two foreign billionaires are going to help us purge the country of foreigners. And so under this libertarianism, and let me tell you about the differences said between the libertarian versus the neoliberal. The neoliberal economy is prioritized to concentrate, to maintain the government, and to orient the government towards facilitating capitalist growth and expansion. Neoliberalism wants to take the concepts of liberalism, freedom, autonomy, mobility, and remove that from individuals and give it over to capital. So this very time, we live in a society where the United States wants to close the border, build walls, and kick out foreigners. Those same policymakers create policies that are enforced by the gun to allow revenue. Revenue moves freely. Everything we want for money, we want for humanities, is allowed for money. United States has allowed for and imposed across the globe for money to move freely across borders. If you are a head of a state and you say, well, I'm not going to allow billionaires to come in and buy up resources. Or if a billionaire comes into our country to invest and builds a factory for labor, and then our country says, well, we're going to increase the minimum pay for our laborers. We're going to increase safety standards for our workers. Then you can mothball that thing and go to the next bordering company and say, hey, we're not going to give any labor protections or minimum wage guarantees for our laborers. And so there was a time where a government could say, no, we're not going to allow you to scuttle this factory. And if you scuttle this factory, we will nationalize it and continue to produce and distribute. So neoliberalism, what's new about neoliberalism? Because a lot of people talk about neoliberalism, but I don't hear people explaining it. All neoliberalism is saying, hey, we want to remove all of the liberal rights, the new liberal, we want to take the concept of liberalism, which was a revolutionary idea in the day, because liberalism and republicanism replaced monarchism. So it is an old way of organizing, structuring, and conceptualizing societies and systems. So we want to give liberty to capital. And we want your liberty is no longer an innate or an inalienable human right. Liberty is now a commodity, and you can have as much liberty as you can afford. Even in the country that says, you look at the same time Trump says, I want to round up all the immigrants and kick them out. He is setting up and institutionalizing and saying, hey, we're putting a price on immigration. If you're a Korean billionaire, if you're a Haitian multimillionaire, if you're a Venezuelan oligarch, you come and give the federal government 4, 5, 6 million, automatic citizenship. You come to the head of the line, you get automatic citizenship. So once became a right, is now a product to be manufactured, packaged, and sold. So the neoliberals basically are saying we want a merit-based society, and this is a just system. This new neoliberalism is just because anybody can elevate within the system. Anybody, if you invent something, or if you get a high-paying job, or if you develop some type of technical skill, you can get a job as a programmer. You can go into the military and become a high-ranking military officer. You could join the Democratic Party and rise through the ranks of the party, from collecting signatures and passing out voter registration to being a local precinct chair, to being president. You could be a community organizer, because this is a merit-based system. So they justify this dog-eat-dog unregulated capitalism by saying anyone can join. So at the same time, you notice the Democratic Party is implementing neoliberalism, unmitigated capitalism enforced by U.S. military imperialism, meaning that any nation that does not get with the new model will be invaded and destabilized and overthrown, and we will put a leader in that is malleable and accepting and that can embrace this economic system. And even if you're a dictator or a theocrat like Saudi Arabia, as long as you don't interfere with the movement of capital and the accumulation of capital, you can do whatever you want. But if you do interfere with the accumulation and movement of capital, then you are a terrorist. We'll look at your human rights violation. So Saudi Arabia can set up public hangings of homosexuals. And the United States employs no sanctions, because as restrictive as Saudi Arabia is socially, is theocratic, social, cultural, political restrictions, they have no restrictions on the accumulation and movement of capital. So they turned literally a blind eye. You can commit genocide, Israel, if you turn a blind eye and you allow for neoliberal economic policies. But if you are Gaddafi, if you are Maduro, if you are a nation, then all of your civil rights abuses, all of it, Mossad, Syria, Yemen, Libya. So that's what neoliberalism is. It is wicked, it is horrible, it is horrendous. But one component of the neoliberal system is the neoliberal systems sees multinational corporations as allies and partners. The neoliberals also support regulation, government maintenance, and they also take the position that will allow Negroes, foreigners, and all these other populations to participate in this neoliberal new spirit of the age. So no, we're not going to stop imperialism, but we will allow for transgender people to join the military to be frontline fodder for imperialism. And within the imperialist army, within the imperialist military force, we'll even provide transgender people with gender affirming medical care if they agree to become frontline soldiers for the imperialist project. We will reserve at MIT opportunities for brilliant people of lesser means. So if you are like these Negroes, y'all love to post, what is it? It's December. So in about 3 to 4 months, I'm going to have to go online and watch all these black people post these Negroes. This young black man graduated with a 4.5. You know, I can't even talk. My son, you know, they just finished. They're coming to the end of the semester, and my son has a 4.5 GPA. I told him, stop picking cotton at night. You're doing too much. I can't let his mama hear me. But you get to 4.0 if you get A's in all your classes. You can go beyond a 4.0 if you're taking like college prep or AP classes or whatever. I don't pay no attention to that. I'm like an old school father. I'm gonna come to my sons when they're full on adult and I'm trying to shake them down for money or something, like I'll put a roof over your head. I'm waiting to have my speech about that. But anyway, but I've at least tried to indoctrinate my son into veganism and leftist revolutionary Pan-African ideology. I've done my part. If he does go out here and sell his intellect to the highest bidder, I take no responsibility. But I digress. It's almost, what is it? It's in about 3 to 4 months. I'll have to go online and say, look at this little Negro. He graduated with a 4.5. He's a Rhodes Scholar, and he's got accepted to 50 different high institution Ivy League colleges. And we brag about that. And the neoliberals are like, yeah, we'll allow minorities. But they also want to maintain a partnership between multinational corporations. And in that partnership of multinational corporations, there is oversight and regulations. And I know we take shit for granted. And I'm not going to say that Americans, including Negro Americans, there's first and second class citizens. I take the position that Black people in this country are more akin to subjects of an empire than citizens of a nation. And I believe that the statistics bore me out. I think Black people in the United States are citizens in name only. We have the title and the trappings of American citizens, but in terms of institutional outcomes, instead of in social markers, Black people, we are subjects of the American empire. We're not citizens of the United States. And I truly, truly think that the data bores that out. But for sake of this discussion, and I'm getting kind of late and I'm still on my first page of notes, I'm gonna have to pick this up. Black people, as all citizens of America, we're not spoiled, but we are ignorant. And I'm going to say ignorant because there's two things. There's two components to being ignorant. One, you're not taught. Two, you ignore. The core of ignorance is to ignore. So we're not taught something and we're not engaging in seeking it independently. And a lot of times people talk about hidden knowledge and hidden information, but people just don't give a damn. Most people in the United States do not understand the labor struggle or the class struggle in the United States, even though the United States has the most violent class and labor struggles outside of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union and even China are a special case. In Asia, I take nothing away. I commend the communist of Russia and the communist of China. They are makers of history. We should all understand and have regard for the class struggles of Asia. But in the Western world, and I know the world, and I know these terms, again, I'm not going to explain. I understand that these are not accurate, and many of them are antiquated terms, but I don't have time to explain why those terms are antiquated and explain what I'm trying to explain. In the Western world, the Western imperialist settler colonial states, the United States has the most violent labor struggle of all, and we are ignorant of the labor struggle. We are ignorant of the concessions that the working class masses have secured from the state. We don't understand the concessions that were secured and what was done to secure those concessions. And even though we're not spoiled, we take many of the concessions and the sacrifices of the struggles of the past. We take them for granted, which is why we're losing them. And we're losing ground because we can't even distinguish. We don't understand that we think we're in the boiling pot. And we don't understand when the temperature gets turned up. We sit there and say, there's no difference. So if the chef is turning up the temperature on the water every 15 minutes, we say the water is the same now than it was 15 minutes ago. And I'm like, ain't no difference between 40 degrees and 50 degrees. Ain't no difference between 50 degrees and 60 degrees. I don't notice no difference. Ain't no difference between Democrats and Republicans. Ain't no difference between neoliberalism and libertarian kleptocracy. It's all the same. They're both bad. First of all, the pot is bad. The pot I don't belong in the fucking pot. I understand that. But now that we're in the pot, there are degrees of worsening. And if you misdiagnose or if you ignore the progression, you're playing yourself. Yes. Anyway. So, that's libertarianism. Libertarianism is bad. Libertarianism is bad. Libertarianism, even though it is championed and fully embraced by the Democrats, was actually institutionalized by the Republicans. The libertarian state was always a stepping stone. The powers that be never intended to stand or rest at libertarianism. Libertarian, I'm talking about neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is the economic agenda of the Project for a New American Century, which was formerly known as the 1,000 Points of Light. It was implemented, since the implementation of the New Deal and the emergence of the Soviet Union as a world power, the global capitalist elite embarked on a multi-decade, multi-generational plan to destroy communism across the globe, to eliminate communism and socialism as an option for organizing one's society. You either destroy the communist states or you integrate them into capitalism. And you allow the communist states, Vietnam, China, to still have their rhetoric, to still have their symbols. Who cares? As long as you allow for the accumulation, expansion, and movement of capital, you can call yourself whatever the fuck you want. But even if you're a little nowhere ass place like Grenada, and you say, well, we're going to have us a socialist government. Oh, you're a threat to democracy. And so the neoliberal policy was implemented. The first thing the capitalists did with the New Deal, and I'm not celebrating the New Deal. The New Deal was implemented to rescue capitalism. The capitalists felt very vulnerable. And there were two factions. There ain't no difference. A capitalist is a capitalist. There were more than two, but let's just go broadly. There were two factions under capitalism. One faction was like, let's go to all-out war. Let's nuke the Soviet Union and put troops in the streets of America. Let's go to all-out war. Other faction of capitalists say, let's give over a little. Let's give some concession. Let's give some labor rights. Let's include the living wage. Let's provide some programs to the hungry, starving masses. So one would say, let's seduce. You know, you got the lover boy method and you got guerrilla pimps. The lover boy wants and the guerrilla pimp have the exact same agenda, to exploit women. One uses seduction, one uses brute force and violence. That does not mean that the guerrilla pimp is not above using seduction and that the lover boy is not above putting his hands on a woman. But if you are a woman seeking to protect yourself or to liberate yourself from one or the other, it does require psychological and material different types of work and to understand what mode the various pimp is in. Ain't no difference. And so there was a multi-generational, multi-decade agenda to reassert the power of capitalism, to reassert, not because capitalism was ever conquered, but because we are dealing with psychopaths. They don't want most of the money. They want all of the money. They don't want a majority of the power. They want all the power. So you'll have a capitalist that says, well, we generated we have a 5% bump in profits this quarter. If you have another 5% bump in profits the next quarter, you have failed. Michael Parenti said something that I don't think we don't understand. I don't know. Is Aromo home yet? Because Aromo's on his way to have dinner too. But anyway, Michael Parenti said a capitalist only wants one thing, and that's more. There is no limitation. Marx also said that the capitalist will exploit the worker, the environment, the system unto death. Derrick Jensen said, it's 3 generations of white men. The white men, heterosexual, cisgendered, upper middle class, upperly mobile white men, all said, he said the system has a death urge. So even though you might sit back and say, ain't no difference, New Deal don't mean nothing, New Deal didn't liberate us. To the capitalists, if you go back and read their writings, if you go back to their institutes, if you go look at the think tanks they fund, they were scared shitless. They were scared shitless when black people say, hey, could you perhaps stop lynching us and let us live and enjoy the very laws that you wrote for us? That fucking drives them into a tizzy. I say all the time, and this is another quote, man, you need to take this to the bank. The history of America is the history of one-sided class war. White folks fighting for conquest and we fighting for justice. And if we're fighting for justice and the other side is fighting for conquest, we can never fucking win. The only way to defeat conquest is with counter conquest. But y'all ain't ready to go there. That's going a little too far. So all that to say is, we don't understand neoliberalism. So we don't recognize when neoliberalism moves into libertarianism and kleptocracy, which is the next step. And we think because libertarianism is bad and neoliberalism is bad, they're the same thing. And we don't understand that the temperature has been increased because it's not enough. I don't see nothing different. They both are imperialists. They both are. And we so busy patting ourselves on the back for recognizing the commonalities of our enemies and oppressors, we don't want to waste time to understand the distinctions. And then we insist on everybody as short-sighted as we are. So I guess I'm gonna have to wrap this up. And this is all what I'm calling it. So I guess we'll pick this up Monday. We'll pick it up Monday, and we'll do part 2. Because I ain't even started talking about MAGAnomics. I'm talking about Obamanomics. I'm talking about what Kamala would have done if she took power. I haven't even gotten into what Trump's about to do. And I'm going to go on record saying it's fucking worse. And if y'all motherfuckers were not able to mobilize to subvert Biden, if we weren't able to form effective opposition to the Biden administration, you ain't got shit for what's coming next. But for you who thinks there's no difference, bless your hearts. If nothing's going to change for you in the next 4 years, bless your motherfucking heart. I don't know what planet you live on, but you go ahead and feel so proud in your inability and unwillingness to recognize the distinction between your enemies, your unwillingness to look at the most powerful entities and some of the most insidious agendas in the world and not be able to dissect and make distinctions. So I'm gonna quickly deal with these comments. Someone said, what was the reason for the rebrand and video deletion? I haven't deleted any videos, so I'm not sure what you're talking about in terms of video deletions. And in terms of rebranding, I have not rebranded. I think the brand has been consistent. The reason I created a new channel is because the other channel was just the Bro Diallo channel from back when I had the radio show. And that's just my own channel. African World Order is a collective or grouping. So it's going to be other shows. Right now we have Rational Radicals and ClassCon. And we have another show for, by, and of, organized and produced by Black women. I'm not sure what they're calling it, but there's some sisters who are scholars that are going to have their own show. And so there's more to come. And so that's what this is. But there has been no rebrand. There's been an expansion to this, but this is an expansion. But there's no rebrand. And I can't think of any videos that have been deleted. Thank you, Black Brew. Much needed, much appreciated. We're trying to grow this. Do I agree that my relationship with Black people? No, I don't think they abuse me, and I don't think I abuse them. That's just a flat no. I guess that's it for the questions. I don't know where Skip is. I'll holler at him. I hope all is well, but I'm sure he's good, or he'd let me know. There ain't nothing gonna change for people, you know. If you know transgender people, if you know young ladies who's lost their reproductive rights, if you know migrants who are going to be hounded and kicked out of the country, they don't matter. Ain't nothing gonna change for the people that matter. It's gonna be exactly the same as it was. I don't know what you talking about, Brittany. You hear all these people in the comments talking about there ain't no difference. So if your life does change for the worse under a Trump administration and things get even worse for you under a Trump administration, that's just because you support the Democrats and you're just spewing Democratic propaganda, just like me. Welcome to the Democratic mainstream, Brittany. We're both Democrats. That's it. I think that is an act of class suicide, and also at the same time class solidarity with the new class that he is just now, as an incarcerated person, wrongly accused of a crime and wrongly now he's joined our class and he's getting the type of treatment of poor and working class people. So yes, and I commend him. I've been calling for white folks to kleptocracy, you become anarchist, liberation is anti-imperialist, animal liberation. Still bring all your white skills of violence and deception and subversion. I said it probably happened. I'm going back it down. Shout out to all the white left. So anyway, until next time. Can y'all hear me now? Somebody in the comments. What happened? Listen tonight, this show. You can't hear me. That's weird. Anyway, I was just saying good night, y'all. Like, share, subscribe. We're up to like 1,600 folks. This channel is really growing. The African World Order channel is growing, and I'm just so grateful, and I'm so appreciative. Where are we now? We're up to 1,500. Wow, that's just, man, blessings on blessings. I'm getting blessing from a God I don't even believe in. I appreciate it. I know I'm just not even going to try because I'm not up to the task. This is the part of the show where Skip would say some impactful words to help us carry forward into the next broadcast. So I'm just say good night and thank you for tuning in. And even before you do it, I'm going to go into the future and thank you ahead of time for subscribing, for contributing, for supporting. Thank you and peace.